Latest on the war in Ukraine, the Biden administration just announcing a new military aid package for the Ukraine. This comes as officials are warning of deteriorating living conditions in an eastern city captured by the Russians 2 weeks ago. That official saying people there are living without water, power, or a working sewage system. They are also unable to bury those who perished during the siege. Joining me now from Kyiv, ABC Foreign News correspondent Tom Soufi Burridge. Tom, let's start with this latest news. The Biden administration announcing a new military aid package for Ukraine. What is included in it?
Yeah, Deirdre, there's two really big headlines in this. So it's a $400 million aid package, military aid. The two big headlines are the following. One is 4 more HIMARS systems. So remember, the US has already supplied 8 of these medium-range, precision-guided rocket launcher systems. We're seeing evidence that the Ukrainians are using those to hit targets behind the enemy lines inside Russian-occupied eastern Ukraine, things like oil depots. And then the other big headline in this aid package is the fact that the US is now going to supply 1,000 artillery shells to the Ukrainians. The difference about these shells compared to the type of shells that the Americans have already given the Ukrainians, and they've given a huge number of the non-precision guided, these new 1,000 ones are precision guided. So effectively they can fire slightly further. The other type of artillery shells already fire further than the sort of systems the Russians have. But these precision-guided ones will hit their targets. They'll use GPS. They'll pretty much hit their targets all the time. And that is incredibly significant. It means that the Ukrainians have to use less munitions to hit fewer targets, and it could make a big difference in the east of Ukraine, where really Russia is on the offensive and pushing the Ukrainians back.
Okay, Tom, on top of this new aid package, we are also seeing evidence that the first HIMARS provided by the U.S. could be moving the needle on the battlefield. What about humanitarian aid? What do Ukrainian civilians need most right now?
Well, the needs are particularly acute along that contact line between the Russians to the east and the Ukrainians to the west. And in towns along there, then all of the kind of basic needs are in shortage. So in towns right on the front line, water is not necessarily easy to come by. Humanitarian aid like food and medical supplies. Now, there are a lot of groups, some of them internationally run, some of them Ukrainian run, are trying to move supplies into those areas, but I have heard a lot of reports over the last few weeks that even humanitarian trucks and convoys going into those areas sometimes do get shelled, maybe not deliberately by the Russians, but at least get hit by collateral damage. I mean, for example, a few weeks ago, we saw a French journalist killed. He was actually traveling with a humanitarian convoy to cover that story, and sadly, he died.
Tom, this war is obviously awful, like all of them, and it is being fought on numerous fronts. And then, of course, diplomatically, there is a lot going on behind closed doors. Where does it stand right now? Where is Ukraine most at risk?
Well, there's no doubt about it. In the Donbas, the Ukrainians are up against it. I mean, they've been continually pushed back for a number of weeks now by the Russians. The Russians obliterating cities, but gradually taking territory. Now, look, Western officials are saying that the Russians are losing big in terms of men and equipment too, but the Ukrainians are definitely losing a lot of men. So that is really the focus of the fighting, but it is true that there are multiple fronts to this war. So down in the south, near a city called Kherson, which the Russians took right at the beginning of the war, the Ukrainians are trying to go on the counter-offensive. Today, Ukrainian officials saying that they are sometimes making headway there, but I don't think we're seeing evidence that they're making any significant progress. The most significant progress recently for the Ukrainians was to not retake control of, but actually to push the Russians off Snake Island, a small piece of territory out in the Black Sea, strategically important. The Ukrainians actually, within the last couple of days, put a flag on the island, but we're still not seeing evidence that the Ukrainians have got enough air control in that area to actually put troops and equipment back on the island without the threat that the Russians will fire missiles or shell the island and destroy the troops or kill the troops and destroy the equipment on there. So the Ukrainians don't have control of that island, but they've at least pushed the Russians off it.
Tom, we know as far as diplomatic efforts go, G20 diplomats deeply divided, failing to find common ground over the war. What kind of effect will that have, this division, not only on Ukraine, but globally?
Well, I mean, I think this G20 meeting, the fact that you've got Antony Blinken, the US Secretary of State, inside the same room as Sergei Lavrov, or at least the same summit, is interesting. But the fact that there was no photo is not surprising. And the fact that the two men did not speak or meet is not surprising either. It's another reminder, really, that the war here in Ukraine has completely ripped up the geopolitical landscape that existed before. Look, the West was supporting Ukraine significantly in the 8 years running up to this full-scale invasion by Vladimir Putin. But really, the support from the West was tentative. It was kind of probing. It was giving Ukrainian support for its democratic reforms. It was training troops, but it wasn't full-blown. It wasn't provocative to the Russians in many ways. But once Putin invaded the country, the West has clearly completely revamped their strategy, and that has changed politics all around the world. It doesn't mean that every single country out there is on the side of Ukraine. There's a lot of big nations like India, Brazil, who have taken quite ambiguous positions. They don't want to upset Russia and burn bridges with the Russians. At the same time, they are showing tentative support towards the Ukrainians. But in terms of the geopolitical landscape, it's completely changed, and now we do have a clear confrontation between the West, the US and Europe, and Russia and its key allies, and then a load of countries in the middle trying to kind of do a kind of difficult dance, if you like.
Tom, thank you so much for your reporting.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.